It was known as one of the last great migrations, at a time when territories existed west of the Mississippi River, and some of the boundary with Canada was still undefined. From the 1840s through the 1860s, 500,000 people, lured by almost biblical promises of freedom and endless open farmland, trekked across the continent to settle the North American West. Many of the homesteaders were immigrants, drawn from Western Europe and Scandinavia. For these new North Americans, the migration brought them across the wide Atlantic Ocean to the ports of New York and Montreal. By either traveling up the St. Lawrence or ascending the Erie Canal, they headed for their first gathering place at the eastern end of Lake Erie, the bustling city of Buffalo, New York. From there, they would follow the Great Lakes water route to Detroit, and then on to Chicago or the Mississippi and St. Louis, the gateway to the West. From here, they would access the Missouri, which led to Independence, the stepping-off point, where the water route ended and the overland route to the Pacific began, the Oregon Trail. The steamship Atlantic story centers on that link of migration at the base of the Great Lakes in Buffalo, New York. She tragically sank in the center of Lake Erie, not far from the small town of Port Dover in Ontario, Canada. This story is very familiar to sea hunter Mike Fletcher, as Port Dover is his hometown.
With the Nether Clipper, we're looking at about a two-hour steam from Port Dover to the tip of Long Point.
Here at Mike's house, they finalize their plans to arrive at the wreck site just off Long Point, a dreaded graveyard of shipwrecks.
You can see why. You've got the conversion of all the traffic into the west on the Great Lakes. They came to Buffalo, that was the central spot. They had to steam west up Lake Erie, and from there they could access the Mississippi, the wagon trains west.
Heading for its home port of Detroit, Michigan, the steamer Atlantic was loaded with over 400 immigrants. She was part of a network of steamboats that transported immigrants along with the tools and provisions they would need in their new frontier homes in the West. James Delgado will lead the archaeological investigation.
This is a wooden steamship built in 1848. Gold has just been discovered in California. The war with Mexico has just ended. Strife is already beginning to divide the country on the issue of slavery. James Polk is the president, and that's when the ship is built. And it's still looking pretty much like this on the bottom of Lake Erie 150 years later.
Tomorrow, the team plans to dive the wreck and investigate its state of preservation.
Mike, clearly when we get the side scan image, it's going to really help us with the dive plan.
You're going to be able to direct me and John too around the wreck. You know, move forward the collision area. I don't know if it's going to show up in the side scan, but it will be here where the hogging arch meets on the port side. Yeah, you're going to be able to look at a side scan image and direct me around the wreck.
Let's get out there and go find this thing.